This video is all about control. The irrigation controller is the brain of the irrigation system.
It's programmed to complete the function of irrigating all zones attached to it. In this video, we'll discuss the steps involved with getting a controller properly set up in a good location, wired, and even go over some basic schedule programming. When you're called to a project or job site to install an irrigation system, the following steps are typically involved with the controller installation process. You'll need to choose a location and verify the location with the property owner or manager. You'll need to decide the best mounting option: post, wall, indoor-outdoor, pedestal, or pole, and obtain the correct mounting hardware, including conduit if necessary. You'll need to know which type of wire you'll be using for the valves and sensors, and how the wire will be run from the controller to the field. You'll install the controller cabinet at the chosen location. You'll install the wiring. And finally, you'll program the controller. So now you're on the job site, and it's time to look around the area to choose a location for the controller. Keep the following in mind when choosing a location. The location should be accessible. For your installation and future maintenance, the location should have easy access for you and the homeowner. This includes placing the controller at a good height to view the display. You'll also want to make sure that there's room for the controller door to open fully. Is there line voltage power at the proposed location? Keep in mind that if it will be hardwired, it needs to be installed by an electrician per local code. Will you be able to have valve control wires and possibly sensor wires run to it? There is no point picking a location that will require extensive extra work or cost to properly get wires from the controller out to the field. Be mindful of the entire system when picking your location. It would be ideal if you can easily see some of the irrigation zones when they are activated. If you plan to install a Wi-Fi controller, verify a strong signal at the location and take actions if the signal is too weak. Make sure that the router supports the controller type you want to install. Once you have a location chosen, you should verify the location with the owner or manager before making any solid plans on using that location. This step can stop headaches before they happen, as it's hard to move a controller when the location isn't correct. You should also look for any potential electrical interference that could occur from pumps, fans, air conditioners, electrical panels, or electrical meters. Locate the controller a minimum of 8 feet or 2.4 meters from any of these devices. Now, let's go over mounting options for your controller. The type of property dictates the options you have. With a single-family house, you might naturally consider mounting the controller inside of the garage. But make sure to suggest a remote or Wi-Fi controller, because service calls can then be scheduled even if no one's there to access the garage. Outdoor controllers are made to withstand the elements and often come equipped with basic security locks. But the location should be isolated from the sprinkler spray, and you should have visibility to irrigation zones. For locations without a wall or a building in the desired controller location, you may need to find another mounting option, such as a pedestal, post, or a pole. Along with the mounting options, you'll want to know the hardware and tools needed to install the controller. Most controllers include some type of wall anchors, but depending on the surface, you may need a different type of anchor or fastener. Think about the structure you plan to mount the controller to, and use the hardware that will be best for that area. Use conduit to conceal wiring, even if the controller is mounted inside a garage or building. This can make for a cleaner, more professional installation. But most importantly, conduit protects the wire from environmental, pest, and home maintenance damage. Be sure to use the correct size conduit to match the controller openings and be able to handle the wire sizes going to the field from the controller. And of course, have the right tools for the process, such as a screwdriver, drill bit, and a level. After finding a good location and properly mounting your controller, it's time to wire it up. Most smaller systems can use multi-strand color-coded wire rated for direct burial. The number of wires you'll need is determined by the number of valves in your site's irrigation system, plus a common wire, plus any wire for future expansion or maintenance considerations. If installing a decoder system, follow the manufacturer's recommendations for wire size and type. Make sure you know how you'll run the field wires and sensor wires from the controller to the valves and sensors on the project. Ensure there aren't any obstructions that could cause issues when running the wire. For wiring the specific controller you're using on a job site, make sure to refer to the manufacturer's owner's manual. Hunter Industries has many videos for different controllers that show basic setup and programming, but we will show you the general method for installing the Pro C residential controller next. Before installing any controller, make sure the controller is not plugged into a wall outlet, or if hardwired, make sure the circuit breaker is off so no power is going to the transformer. It's also a good idea to remove the face pack off of the controller before mounting it. Remove the ribbon cable from the back of the faceplate, and then push the white hanger release button on the back of the faceplate down. Then pull the faceplate out to the left to fully remove it. Generally follow these steps to mount and wire the controller. Mark the controller mounting hole locations on the wall using a template if provided. Before drilling into any wall, check for wiring, plumbing, or other utilities that should be avoided inside the wall. Drill pilot holes or anchor holes into the mounting surface. Run a guide wire through the conduit to simplify wire installation. Make sure the controller height is correct so it's easy for the average person to see the display and programming dial buttons. Ensure that the controller is level. Once the controller is mounted, pull the valve wiring and any sensor wiring through the conduit into the controller cabinet. Fasten the valve wires to the proper terminals inside the controller. Be sure to turn off the power before adding any station modules if adding them after the controller is installed. Add station modules as needed if the controller is a modular type controller. Taking a little extra time to trim the wires or even creating wraps can make the installation look much cleaner. Hunter has a family of click sensors that can be added to the controller. The mini click and rain click will help to ensure the sprinklers don't run during a rainstorm. The freeze click will suspend irrigation if the temperature gets too low, preventing ice from forming on the landscape or hardscape. The wind click can be used to prevent irrigation if the conditions are too windy, preventing overspray and ineffective watering. The flow click can be installed to shut down the entire system if an overflow condition occurs, helping to protect against flood damage and erosion. The soil click monitors soil moisture in the landscape and prevents watering if conditions detected mean that there is no need to water. Turn off the power by using the on-off power bar. Remove the metal jumper from the sensor terminals and install the wire from the sensor to the two terminals. Refer to the owner's manual for proper wiring. In this case, we are wiring the SolarSync sensor into the sensor terminal of a Pro C controller. Then you can turn the controller back to the on position. Know where you are going to mount a smart port and give it ample room to be able to plug in a remote receiver unit. Oftentimes, people will add a conduit-sized T to the wiring conduit that has a 1/2 inch threaded outlet. They will then screw the smart port into the threaded outlet. Before installing the smart port, make sure the controller is not plugged into a wall outlet, or if hardwired, make sure the circuit breaker is off so no power is going to the transformer. Once the power is off, remove the 24-volt AC security sticker. Loosen the terminal screws. Attach the red wire to the first AC terminal. Attach the white wire to the second AC terminal. And attach the blue wire to the REM terminal. Then you can turn the controller on-off power bar back to the on position. Once you have the wiring complete, you can install the faceplate to the controller and connect the power ribbon. Then you can turn the circuit back on or plug the controller into the wall outlet. When it comes to programming the controller, the amount of start times and the length of time to run the irrigation depends on many factors, including the plant types being watered, the soil type, the exposure to the sun, and terrain type. Hunter Industries has a free runtime calculator to help you determine a starting point for your irrigation program. Once installed and running, you should check back to be sure that the watering programming is working as expected for the plant material being watered. Adjustments will need to be made based on many variables involved in proper irrigation. If you're not sure how to calculate proper runtimes based on plant water requirements, we recommend using the Hunter Runtime Calculator tool on the Hunter Industries website. To find this information, visit hunterindustries.com and click on the Professionals tab. With all the steps completed up to this point, you now have a controller in a good location, mounted and wired, connecting all the valves and sensors back to the controller. The next step is programming the controller so that a proper irrigation and watering schedule can take place. We'll go over some of the basic programming steps next. Turn the dial to the date-time position. Use the plus and minus buttons and arrow buttons to enter the correct date and time. Now that we have the correct date and time in the controller, we can program our watering schedule. First though, let's talk about the definitions for stations, programs, and start times. A station is a group of sprinklers that are controlled by a single valve. A station is also known as a zone. A program is a group of stations that share the same watering schedule. By schedule, we mean watering days of the week on which the program will run, as well as the number of times the program will cycle per watering day. If all stations will be watering on the same days and the same number of start times on a day, you can program all of your stations in the same program. However, if some of your zones need to be watered more or less frequently than others, then you must separate them into multiple programs so they can have different day schedules. The ideal way to use programs is to organize them by plant types. For example, all turfgrass zones might have a particular day schedule, but all shrub zones might need less frequent watering. Use program A for turf and program B for shrubs. Another reason to separate stations into programs would be if some zones need to be watered only once a day and others need to be watered multiple times a day. Each program can have a different number of start times. The start time is the time at which the program will initiate the watering cycle. You can set multiple start times for each program, which will cause the program to run more than once. You can have a program water up to 4 times per watering day. Remember that each start time causes all the stations within a program to run a complete cycle in sequential order. Let's say that you have 2 newly seeded zones, stations 1 and 2 for example, and because it's new grass, you may need to water 4 times a day with the exception of Thursday, because that's mowing day. Let's also say that you have another 2 zones with trees, and these are areas that need to be watered once a day every 4 days. Therefore, you'll need to divide these 4 stations into 2 different programs, A and B. Program A can have stations 1 and 2, and Program B can have stations 3 and 4 with trees. Turn the dial to the start times position and use the keypad to navigate through the start times. Each program that you want to run must have at least 1 start time. Be sure to note which program is shown in the display. The start time initiates sequential irrigation for all stations with runtimes in that program. Each program can have multiple start times if you would like to have multiple cycles throughout the day, but only 1 start time is required to initiate irrigation. Each station that is going to run needs runtimes. Turn the dial to the runtime's position and use the button keypad to enter the desired runtimes for each station. Be sure to note the program that is displayed and make sure it matches your intended schedule. Scroll through the days with the arrow buttons and use the program buttons to switch between programs. Use the plus and minus buttons and arrow buttons to designate the days that you would like each program to water. In this controller, the raindrop above each day of the week will indicate if it's an active watering day. Or if it's not active, there will be a circle with a line through it over the water drop. Once you have the date and time, start times, run times, and watering days entered, the controller will follow that program. Manually running a test program at this point will help you verify that the controller is wired correctly to the valves and functioning properly. If you installed a solar sink, you'll need to program the solar sink per the instructions and set the region and water factor from the chart found in the solar sink owner's manual. If you have a Hydrowise controller, you'll need to connect the controller to the Wi-Fi network at the location. Using the connection wizard, press OK to start the configuration. Press OK again to scan for the desired wireless network. Once you see the network you want to connect to, press Confirm. Enter the wireless password and press OK on the display. The display then shows that you're trying to connect. Press OK when the connection is successful. You'll be shown the serial number that you can enter into the Hydrowise app to link your controller to your account. The Wi-Fi icon in the lower right corner of the display shows the controller is connected. The controller is now mounted, connected to Wi-Fi, and linked to an account. You'll need to finalize controller scheduling in the Hydrowise app. The final step for controller installation is to check each station to make sure it activates. You may need to wait until the rest of the system is installed before completing this step. Now that the controller is on the wall, working properly and scheduled based on the plant water needs, your process of installing and programming a controller is complete. It is a best practice to check the site after a couple of weeks, especially for new landscape material, to make sure that the system is watering and plants are looking healthy. These steps, as we've described them, should cover a majority of projects you work on. If you need more information about specific Hunter controllers, you can always find that information by visiting hunterindustries.com.